When I secretly slipped the divorce agreement into the quarterly report, I thought it was the final step toward freedom. In my last life, I loved Sophia for a lifetime and devoted myself to her and her family, only to end up unjustly killed. 3 hours after being reborn, I didn't hesitate to cut my losses in time. My icy wife turned boss, as expected, signed all the documents without even looking. Just as I was holding the signed folder, thinking I could finally say goodbye to that nightmarish life for good, what I didn't know was that every bit of the crazy complaints and resentments in my heart, she heard them all, word for word. I snapped my eyes open. Blinding sunlight streamed through the gap in the expensive blackout curtains and hit my face. I was gasping hard, like a fish on the brink of death finally returned to water. The room around me was the spacious, luxurious, but ice-cold for 3 years marriage bedroom that belonged to Sophia and me. Only my scent in the room. The electronic calendar on the bedside table showed the date. October 26th, 2023, 8:15 a.m. I was reborn, back to half a year before the tragedy. The intense emotions crashed over me. Ecstasy, lingering fear, anger, relief. Eventually all of it crystallized into a dead, icy void. The helpless image of my last moments in my previous life was engraved in my bones. Every bit of love had long since been eroded in that cold river water. In this life, my only goal is to survive freely and away from all trouble. And the first step to surviving is to sever all ties with Sophia and the Taylor family once and for all. I made my preparations, quickly got up, washed, and changed into a proper suit. Today would be my last day at Taylor Group. I had dug the divorce agreement I had prepared long ago from the depths of the study drawer, a document I had never served due to last life's resentment and cowardice. And after checking it carefully, I slipped it into an ordinary departmental quarterly report that required Sophia's signature. The thickness was just right. Without a careful flip, nobody would notice. At 9:30 a.m., I stood outside the CEO's office on the top floor of the Taylor Group headquarters, took a deep breath, and knocked on the heavy mahogany door. "Come in." A cool, emotionless female voice came from inside, as always. I pushed the door open. Behind a large desk, Sophia was bent over reviewing documents. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, tracing the contours of her exquisite yet aloof profile. She wore a sharply tailored custom suit, her long hair neatly pinned up, revealing a pale, graceful neck. 3 years on, this woman remained breathtakingly beautiful and chillingly cold. As the helmswoman of Taylor Group, she was a success, but as a wife, to me she was an iceberg that could not be melted. In my last life, I was drawn to that beauty and coldness like a moth to a flame, and in the end, I was left nothing. "Miss Taylor, this is the marketing department's Q3 summary report. I need your signature." I placed the folder on the desk, my voice steady, betraying no ripple. Sophia didn't even look up. She just gave a soft took the folder and opened it. Her eyes quickly skimmed the report. Then she picked up the Parker pen on the desk and fluently signed her name where required. Page 1. Page 2. My heart quickened slightly, my gaze glued to Sophia's movements, waiting for the page that held the agreement that would decide my fate. At last, she turned to the page with the divorce agreement tucked in. I nearly held my breath. Yet Sophia's motion didn't pause at all, not even the slightest hesitation in reading. The pen touched down, and the two graceful yet forceful characters Sophia appeared in the signature spot of the divorce contract. Everything went smoother than I could have imagined. The huge boulder that had weighed on my heart for 3 years seemed to finally drop to the ground at that moment, sending up a cloud of dust and leaving me with a kind of exhausted relief. It's over, finally over. The entanglements that haunted my last life to death are wiped clean in this life, with just a light stroke from her. I took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, trying not to draw her attention. Just as I was about to pick up the signed folder, politely take my leave, and then go straight to HR to process my resignation and begin the new life I had longed for, Sophia's uniquely icy tone reached my ears. "All the documents are signed. If there's nothing else, you may leave. Yes, Miss Taylor. I hurriedly reached for the folder, clutching that sheet of paper, my symbol of freedom, tightly in my hand. Just then, Sophia seemed to suddenly remember something and added, "Oh, I almost forgot to tell you. I agreed to go with Lucas Reed to Rivertown to discuss a business deal. The afternoon flight leaves soon. We're about to depart." Boom! Those words struck my ears like thunder. The knuckles holding the folder tightened instantly from the force, turning a pale bluish white. Rivertown. That's the place. In my last life, it was that very business trip that became the turning point for all the tragedies. That hypocrite Lucas had meticulously plotted to get Sophia drunk in Rivertown, stage an accident, and completely bind her to him, coupled with the lingering ambiguity between us. At least that's how I saw it last time. Sophia grew even more trusting and dependent on Lucas. In the end, with Lucas operating behind the scenes, the company was pushed into an abyss of no return. And I, the inconvenient stumbling block, was beaten up by people Lucas hired, left disabled, and died in pain. Cold hatred bit into my heart like a viper again. But I quickly forced it down. It doesn't matter anymore. None of this is about me now. This time, I will never make the same mistakes. Whether Sophia goes to Rivertown to meet Lucas or to Mars to open a market is none of my business. I have to get out of this quagmire immediately. All right, Miss Taylor. Understood. I wish you a smooth trip. I lowered my gaze, masking every emotion from my eyes, bowed, and prepared to leave the office I never wanted to set foot in again. Just as my fingers were about to pull the folder completely free and I was turning to leave. Eason. For some reason, Sophia suddenly called out to stop me. My heart tightened and I forced myself to stay calm as I turned back. I saw Sophia lift her eyes to look at me, whether it was my imagination or not. In those eyes that were always full of frost, I unusually caught a hint of hesitation, even a very faint trace of guilt. That was impossible. In my last life, until the day I died, this woman never once showed me any emotion other than indifference and contempt. Sophia's fingertips unconsciously tapped twice on the desktop, the sound seeming slightly softer than before, but still carrying a sense of distance. You know about the Rivertown deal? It's very important. Lucas has been handling that business the whole time. This business trip with him is for work. Don't read too much into it. She paused there, her voice dropping a few degrees as if it were hard to say. When I get back this time, we should find some time to talk properly. Talk? About what? About how you and Lucas will be flying off together as a couple. About how I should take the money and leave in a way that saves face. Or should I wait until you go to Rivertown, Lucas gets you drunk and makes things irreversible, and then you come to talk to me about divorce details? By then the relationship won't be ordinary at all. Work? What a pretentious excuse. I sneered inwardly, ranting furiously. I just wanted to end this conversation as fast as possible. What I didn't know was that, at the height of my inner turmoil, Sophia, seated behind the desk, gave a sudden tremor to the hand holding her pen, and the nib scored a stark, conspicuous blot across a blank area of the document below. Her pupils contracted ever so slightly. She looked up at me with a gaze full of incredulous astonishment and scrutiny, as if she were seeing the man standing before her for the first time. Anyway, I've got the divorce papers in my hand now. Wait until you come back from Rivertown triumphant. I'll have my divorce certificate in hand, and it'll just make way for you two lovebirds. Whoever wants to wear this green hat can wear it. This life, I want freedom. Sophia's breath seemed to freeze for a moment. She suddenly looked up, her gaze sharp as a knife, fixed on my face. The look was extremely complicated. Shock, bewilderment, a trace of offended anger. But more than anything, a bewildered sense that her understanding had been turned upside down. I felt a little unnerved by that sudden sharp stare and muttered inwardly, "What's wrong with this woman now?" But outwardly, I kept a respectful expression. "Miss Taylor, anything else? If not, I'll be going." Sophia stared at me, the corners of her brows knitting slightly as if trying hard to make something out, but in the end she only gave a faint nod. lowered her head again to hide the turmoil in her eyes, and her voice returned to its usual coldness. It's nothing. Go on, you're free to go. I felt as if granted a great pardon. I immediately turned and almost ran out of the president's office. The door closed softly. In the vast office, only Sophia remained. She leaned back in her chair, staring blankly at the densely packed skyscrapers outside the window, her slender fingers gently massaging her temples. Just now, what had happened? Was it auditory hallucination? Or had she been so tired lately that she was imagining things? Those cutting, resentful words that carried a heart-stopping sense of prophecy. It was clearly Ethan's voice, yet his mouth hadn't moved at all. Rivertown, Lucas, the rice is already cooked. She unconsciously repeated those keywords, a chill casting over her beautiful face. Could Ethan really hold such hostility and misunderstanding toward Lucas? Even to the point of imagining such degrading things about the relationship between her and Lucas? But the rice is already cooked, such sordid methods. Would Lucas really stoop to that? For the first time, Sophia's heart was thrown into turmoil by the thoughts of a husband she had never paid attention to. I returned to my office, my heart still pounding, not from excitement, but from lingering fear and relief. I quickly pulled the divorce agreement from the folder and carefully locked it in the deepest part of my briefcase. This was my ticket to a new life. Next was resigning. I opened my computer and began drafting my resignation letter. It had to be done quickly, preferably right after Sophia and Lucas left the company, so I could go straight to HR and handle the paperwork before anything unexpected happened. However, plans rarely survive contact with reality. After lunch, just as I sat back at my desk to refine and print the resignation, Sophia's personal assistant Emma Carter clicked over in her high heels. With a professional smile, she said, "Mr. Johnson, Ms. Taylor needs you. Please come to basement parking, Zone B now. She's waiting there." I froze, alarm bells ringing in my head. The basement? Want to see me? No, that can't be right. By the schedule, Sophia should already be on her way to the airport by now. Why would she suddenly call me to the garage? Could she have discovered the divorce agreement? Impossible. If she had found it, given her temperament, she would have reacted on the spot. She wouldn't be this calm. Various speculations rushed into my mind, leaving me in turmoil. But when the boss summons me, especially when Sophia herself calls, I can't refuse. "Okay, Miss Carter, I'll go down right away." I suppressed the unease in my heart, forced myself to stay calm, and stood up to walk toward the elevator. Arriving at the quiet, empty underground parking area B, I indeed saw Sophia's black Maybach parked there. The driver, David Wilson, was not in the car. Sophia stood alone, leaning against the car door as if waiting for something. She had changed out of the morning's formal suit and was wearing a beige trench coat, which made her silhouette appear taller and more slender, but the expression on her face was even more inscrutable than it had been that morning. Wasn't it already decided that you'd be on a business trip this afternoon? Why suddenly call me to a place like this? I glanced around to make sure no one else was nearby and couldn't help whispering under my breath, the ominous feeling inside me growing stronger. Just then, Sophia's cool, clear voice rang out and interrupted my thoughts. "This afternoon's schedule is canceled." I whipped my head around and saw that Sophia had somehow already straightened up and walked to my side. Her expression was calm and smooth, as if she were talking about the most ordinary thing. "I think the matters in Rivertown can be handled by Lucas alone." She paused, her gaze seeming to casually sweep across my face. I hear of suddenly more important matters to attend to. Her tone remained icy, betraying no emotion, but to my ears it struck like another thunderbolt. The schedule canceled? She isn't going to Rivertown? How is that possible? In my previous life, she had fully participated in the Rivertown affair, which gave Lucas an opening. It was precisely after that Rivertown trip that her relationship with Lucas rapidly warmed, and she began to openly support him at the company. This was almost the decisive, crucial event. Could it be? My rebirth really triggered the so-called butterfly effect, but it's only been a few hours. Could the effect be this big? The plot changed? What's going on here? Did my handing over the divorce papers invisibly alter something? Or is there some problem between Sophia and Lucas? 1,000 thoughts flashed through my mind in an instant, but I didn't show any of them on the surface. Sigh, whatever. Anyway, I'll resign from HR tomorrow and then have someone process the divorce certificate. Once the paperwork is done, whatever falls from the sky is none of my business. This damned fate. Let whoever wants to bear it, bear it. Ethan, what are you staring into space for? Suddenly, Sophia turned to look at me. Her gaze was several shades deeper than before, as if she wanted to see straight through my eyes and into every thought in my head. That look carried an unprecedented probing curiosity. Why are you staring at me? Is there something on my face? Let me go now. I need to go back and write my resignation letter. This lousy place is killing me. One more second and I'll age faster. I felt completely ill at ease under her gaze, screaming inside. Knew nothing. I hurriedly forced out a dry smile. By the way, Miss Taylor, you specifically asked me to come. Was it something important? If not, I'll get back to work now. Right now, I just wanted to slip away as fast as possible to put as much distance as I could between myself and this woman who'd suddenly started acting strange. There's nothing particularly important, Sophia said lightly, but just at that moment blocked my way. She opened the car door and gestured, coincidentally, I'm heading out now. The driver had something come up. Drive me. Holy crap, this crazy woman. She clearly has a private driver, and David is always on call. How could he suddenly be busy? This is obviously an excuse. Definitely deliberate. She's out to get me. I almost wailed inwardly, thinking, looks like my resignation plan will have to be delayed another half day. Good heavens. Maybe it was my imagination, but at the moment my inner rant reached its peak, I seemed to see Sophia's usually tightly pressed, beautifully contoured lips curl upward ever so slightly, sketching an extremely faint yet unmistakable arc. The expression vanished in an instant, so quick you'd think it was just a trick of light and shadow. She stopped looking at me and was the first to sit in the front passenger seat, leaving me a tall, resolute back. I froze where I stood, trapped between decisions. In the end, I could only sigh resignedly, go around to the driver's seat, open the door, and sit down. The car was filled with the sharp perfume Sophia always wore, once intoxicating to me, now suffocating. I fastened my seatbelt, started the engine, and asked in as steady a voice as I could, Ms. Taylor, where are we going? Sophia stared ahead and calmly uttered 2 words, Moonlight Coast. Over the next 3 days, I felt as if I had fallen into some bizarre, looping nightmare. Sophia seemed to have suddenly developed an Ethan dependency, and it was serious. On the first day, just after starting work in the morning, the internal line rang and Sophia's cold voice came through. Mr. Johnson, get ready. Accompany me to inspect the East Side building materials market in half an hour. I tried to use the excuse of important work at hand about, but was shut down with, put your work aside for now. This is an important, last-minute schedule. For the whole morning, I was forced to trail behind Sophia, watching her talk with building materials vendors while I felt like a superfluous backdrop, mentally grumbling. Does she really need to handle this herself? And she had to drag me along. Occasionally, Sophia would suddenly ask, what do you think of this material? Catching me off guard and forcing me to give a perfunctory answer. I noticed that every time I internally grumbled wildly, Sophia's seemingly casual glance at me would become unusually deep. The second day was even more absurd. At 2 in the afternoon, the time when people are most prone to drowsiness, Sophia called me in her office and handed me a sealed file. Take this document immediately to Maplewood Law Firm in the west of the city and deliver it personally to Ms. Olivia Martinez. Remember, it must be handed to her personally and not to anyone else. Maplewood Law Firm was on the other side of town. During peak hours, the round trip would take at least 3 hours. Clutching the file, I looked at Sophia's expressionless face and raged inwardly. Does the company pay so many administrative assistants just to be ornamental? Must a director do this kind of errand? My protests were useless. I endured the scorching sun and traffic jams and spent the entire afternoon making the trip returning to the office almost at quitting time. On the third day, during afternoon tea, Sophia's internal line rang on time again. Mr. Johnson, I suddenly feel like having afternoon glow cafe jasmine cheese tea. Less sugar, no ice. I heard the line is 2 hours long now. Could you please go by it? I almost crushed the phone on the spot. Afternoon glow cafe. That trendy place. A 2-hour queue. Sophia, are you out of your mind? Since when do you start drinking stuff only young girls like? But in the end, under the powerful pressure of this is a work order, Mr. Johnson again transformed into a delivery guy, and after 2 hours and 10 minutes finally placed that precious milk tea on Sophia's desk. Sophia only glanced at it coldly, said leave it there, and didn't even touch the cup. Rumors throughout the company began to spread quietly. Everyone was stunned and couldn't figure out what show was being played. Me, the transparent man at the company for 3 years, almost universally regarded as the out-of-favor live-in son-in-law. How had I suddenly become Miss Taylor's favorite? Various guesses poured in. Had I obtained some leverage over Miss Taylor? Or had Miss Taylor finally discovered my inner beauty? Or had the couple's relationship thawed? Only I knew in my heart that this was not any kind of favoritism. It was clearly a disguise for torture and surveillance. The alarm bell in my mind had been ringing nonstop since the third day. This was too abnormal. What exactly did this woman want? Had she noticed something? Had the divorce agreement matter been exposed? What if she had found out? Why not lay it all out directly? This cat and mouse game made me sit on pins and needles, unable to eat or sleep. I tried to find clues in Sophia's behavior, but aside from frequently bossing me around, everything else about her was normal. Toward me, she remained that cold, business-like attitude, with no hint of ambiguity or softening. That made me even more baffled. On the fourth day, an even more aggravating piece of news arrived. The company was going to hold a grand celebration banquet for the deal Lucas had successfully closed in Rivertown. The banquet was held in a ballroom of the Stellar Hotel in the city center. The affair was grand, and almost all mid-level and above managers attended. Under the crystal chandeliers, amidst the scent of fine clothes and the rustle of hair, toasts flowed. Lucas was undoubtedly the most dazzling star of the evening. He wore a bespoke high-end suit, his hair immaculately styled, holding a glass as he moved through the crowd with a complacent smile on his face. People kept coming up to toast him, uttering flattering words. Mr. Reed is truly young and accomplished. This Rivertown deal has done wonders for our company. Yes, with Mr. Reed on the job, he's worth 2 people. It's our good fortune to have a pillar like Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed, please take care of us in the future. Lucas smiled modestly, saying, not at all. It's all thanks to Miss Taylor's trust and the collective effort of our colleagues. But the smugness in the corners of his eyes and the lift of his brows could not be hidden. As chairman, Sophia, of course, attended the banquet. She wore a sapphire blue evening gown, regal and luxurious, yet still exuded a cold aura that kept strangers at bay. She held a glass of champagne, standing in a slightly quieter corner, her gaze calmly fixed on Lucas as he was surrounded by people, revealing no hint of emotion. As a rising star, I was also forced to attend this banquet that felt like a bone stuck in my throat. I held a glass of wine, standing off to the side, watching Lucas's performance with cold eyes and a running inner sneer. Pa, not bad acting. A play you both wrote and starred in, and you're really getting into it. Get a little sweetness first. Fatten the pig before slaughtering it. The profits from this deal will probably end up mostly in your own pocket. Lucas, won't they? Using the company's resources to pave your own way and still having the nerve to accept praise here. Truly shameless. I noticed that when Lucas's gaze occasionally swept over Sophia, a faint, barely perceptible heat and possessiveness would show, and Sophia didn't seem to avoid it. The scene stung my eyes and made me even more determined to leave as soon as possible. At that moment, the climax arrived. Lucas, as if feeling the atmosphere wasn't lively enough, cleared his throat, walked up to the small stage in the center of the banquet hall, picked up the microphone, and, full of self-satisfaction, dropped a bombshell. Everyone, quiet down. Besides the Rivertown deal, Today, I also have a huge piece of good news to announce to you all. Lucas deliberately paused to build suspense, then loudly said, I ran into Mr. James Harrison of Horizon Group in Rivertown by sheer luck. Mr. Harrison has shown a strong interest in investing in our company East District's long-stalled real estate project. In the preliminary talks, the investment could reach this amount. He held up 5 fingers. The audience immediately erupted in uproar. The East District real estate project had been stalled for a long time due to funding issues and was a sore spot for the company. If they could truly bring in a deep-pocketed corporation like Horizon Group to invest, it would undoubtedly be a powerful shot in the arm for Taylor Group. They've come. Finally here. Horizon Group. This is the carefully orchestrated scam. That Mr. Harrison is nothing but a top-tier con man Lucas hired, specializing in setting up schemes to cash out. In my previous life, the company was completely ruined by this project. The funding chain broke, we fell into despair, and in the end, Lucas colluded both inside and out to have us bought out at a low price. Standing in the corner, Sophia's fingertips tightened slightly on her wine glass when she heard the words, Horizon Group, the knuckles whitening. Yet she still said nothing, only watching Lucas perform on stage with a cold gaze. Seeing everything in front of me, I couldn't help it either. I knew that if I didn't stop Lucas now, the tragedy of history would very likely repeat itself. Although I had already decided to leave, I couldn't stand idly by while the company, after all, it contained 3 years of my hard work. And Mr. George Taylor, that elderly man who may look down on me, but is at least honorable, were harmed. Besides, I had my own plan. I suddenly stepped forward, pushed through the crowd, and walked to the front of the stage. My voice wasn't loud, but it was enough for those around to hear, putting on the air of someone giving unwelcome but necessary advice. Miss Taylor, Mr. Reed, I oppose rushing into a partnership with Horizon Group. In an instant, everyone's attention turned to me. The music stopped at just the right moment, and the atmosphere grew a bit eerie. Lucas's smile froze for a moment. Then he quickly put on an expression of grievance and helplessness. Mr. Johnson, what do you mean by that? You should know that Horizon Group is a leader in the industry. Being able to cooperate with them is a rare opportunity for our company. His gaze toward me carried a faint, hard-to-detect chill. One of Lucas's loyal subordinates immediately chimed in. That's right, Mr. Johnson. I know you might have some complaints about Mr. Reed because of the previous project allocation, but you can't let personal grudges play with the company's future. Another senior female executive who had a good relationship with Sophia and was also a company veteran frowned. Mr. Johnson, don't speak carelessly at an occasion like this. Everyone can see Horizon Group's strength. I ignored the background noise and looked straight at Sophia, my tone serious. Miss Taylor, Horizon Group is indeed very powerful, but their background is too complicated and their actions in the capital market over the past 2 years have been quite controversial. Our cooperation, especially when it involves an investment in such a large project in the East District, must be handled with extreme caution. I suggest we immediately initiate the strictest, most comprehensive due diligence. Until the investigation results are out, we absolutely cannot proceed lightly. Although I said that out loud, a very different scene was playing in my mind at that moment. Quick, Sophia, like in the last life, scold me for being short-sighted. Scold me for obstructing the company's development. Scold me for being jealous of Lucas. Then you can naturally drive me out of the company, out of your sight. That way I'll be completely free. Hurry. I was almost praying silently, hoping Sophia would follow the script. All eyes turned to Sophia, waiting for her decision. Lucas also looked at Sophia, his gaze carrying a hint of expectation and confidence, as if certain she would side with him. Yet, in the suffocating silence, Sophia merely calmly swirled the wine in her glass, the deep red liquid forming a graceful arc on the rim. She lifted her eyes, scanning me, then Lucas, and finally the whole room. Her red lips parted, her voice cool and unambiguous. The matter of cooperating with Horizon Group is of great importance. I have my own considerations. This occasion today is to celebrate Lucas's success in Rivertown. Other matters can be discussed later. No scolding, no favoritism, only an unmistakable sense of control. I was completely stunned in place. The script had gone totally off. Not only did she not scold me, she suppressed the issue. What on earth is going on? The celebration banquet ultimately wound up hurriedly in this somewhat eerie atmosphere. My mind was in chaos. I just wanted to get home quickly and sort things out. However, when I reached the hotel parking lot and was about to get into my car, a cold hand grabbed my wrist from behind. I jumped in surprise and turned around, only to find Sophia. She had somehow followed me out. Her face showed a slight tipsiness from the alcohol, but her eyes were unusually clear. "Don't drive." Sophia's voice carried a hint of command that left no room for refusal. "Come with me to Moonlight Coast for a walk." "What now? Going to feel the sea breeze at this late hour? Has Lucas put some sort of love potion in your head?" I inwardly refused 1,000 times. "Don't want to." Sophia raised an eyebrow slightly, took a wallet from her handbag, pulled out a stack of bills, by my estimate at least $1,000. "Come walk with me. This is overtime pay." "Want to? It's my honor to serve Miss Taylor." I changed my expression the moment I saw the money, snatching the bills and stuffing them into my pocket. Mainly, I suddenly thought the sea breeze at night was actually quite refining. At night, on Moonlight Coast, far from the city's clamor, only the waves tirelessly pounding the rocks could be heard. The salty, humid sea wind hit our faces, dispersing the late summer stuffiness and tousling the carefully styled bun on Sophia's head. A few strands fell against her cheek, and in the hazy moonlight, they surprisingly softened her usually icy features. The two of us walked along the beach in silence for a while. Neither of us spoke first, and for a moment the atmosphere was awkwardly delicate. Suddenly, Sophia stopped walking, stared at the pitch-black sea ahead, its surface only dotted with moonlight like scattered silver, and asked softly, "Ethan, do you still remember how the two of us met?" Her voice was very light, almost swallowed by the sound of the waves. I was taken aback for a moment, a complex ripple stirring in my heart. How could I not remember? 3 years ago, it was on this very shore. You were plastered drunk like a lost child, dragging me, a passerby who happened to be there, into a drinking match. In the end, the two drunks ended up sleeping together in a muddle. If you hadn't woken up the next day, holding a prenuptial agreement, and forced me to sign and marry you, would I really have spent these 3 years as a live-in widower? That episode, for me, was not a beautiful beginning. It felt more like the start of an absurd play. Sophia's shoulders trembled almost imperceptibly. She didn't turn around, still looking out at the sea, her voice carrying a hint of uncertainty. "In these 3 years, have you hated me?" "Hate? Saying hate is too mild. In my last life, I even risked my life. I'd love nothing more than to tie you and your precious Lucas to stones and sink you both into this sea to feed the fish." I thought maliciously, but my mouth spread a perfectly professional fake smile. "Miss Taylor, you must be joking. You've provided me with a comfortable life and given me a foothold at the company. I'm grateful beyond words. How could I hate you?" Sophia was silent for a long time, so long that I thought this strange walk by the sea might finally be over. The sea breeze seemed to grow still because of her silence. Then she turned to face me. In the moonlight, her eyes shone startlingly bright, as if tumultuous emotions I had never seen before were surging within them. Struggle, confusion, and a faint, barely perceptible sadness. "I'm a little cold," she said suddenly. "I don't want to go back yet. Go buy some wine." Drinking again, my scalp tingled. That didn't happen in my last life. 3 years ago, it was drinking that caused trouble. What is this woman trying to do? There must be a plot. $2,000. Sophia seemed to see through my hesitation, immediately upping the ante and pulling out 2 more stacks of bills. What conspiracies, what schemes? All of them crumble in the face of cold, hard cash. "Wait here. I'll be right back." I took the money and ran toward the convenience store lights faintly visible in the distance. However, when I woke the next day at noon on the soft bed of a deluxe suite in some stellar hotel and saw Sophia beside me wearing my oversized white shirt, leisurely propped against the headboard flipping through documents, I was petrified, my mind utterly blank. The pounding headache from the hangover hit in waves, but more devastating than the pain was the surreal scene before my eyes. Awake, Sophia heard the noise, lifted her eyes to look at me, a half-smile playing at the corner of her mouth. An expression like a cat that had just gotten away with stealing a treat. I've already taken care of getting you the day off. Also, she paused, her gaze meaningfully sweeping over the rumpled sheets, her voice carrying a lazy huskiness. Last night, you did well. Wait, I was forced into the rules. I felt struck by lightning, jerking upright, then grimacing from the dizziness. $2,000, and I sold myself for that. What a rip-off. This is a loss that would even disappoint my grandmother. My purity. Sophia watched the riot of expressions flash across my face and finally couldn't help it. She burst out laughing. She reached out and ruffled my messy hair, unusually affectionate in tone. Shame on you, getting something for nothing and still acting cute. At that moment, Sophia set the papers down and was about to get out of bed. However, the instant her feet hit the floor, I keenly noticed that her steps were a little off. Her body stiffened imperceptibly, and her delicate brows knit slightly, as if something was causing her discomfort. It seems last night's battle was far more intense than I imagined. That thought popped in my head uncontrollably, making my face flush. Sophia, who had her back to me, went visibly red at the ears, the flush spreading down her neck. She spun around to glare at me reproachfully. The look was no longer cold but tinged with embarrassed annoyance. Then she hurried into the bathroom and shut the door. Listening to the rush of water from the bathroom, I slumped onto the bed, staring at the unfamiliar city view outside the window, feeling desolate and bewildered. This marriage, is it even salvageable? What on earth is wrong with this woman? Even more devastating news awaited me when I returned to the office that afternoon, trembling with apprehension. I had just sat down in my office when I heard a commotion outside. Immediately after, a message came from the secretariat. Mr. George Taylor, Sophia's father, was in the chairman's office, having a heated argument with Sophia over the East District Project's cooperation with Horizon Group. Mr. George even insisted in person on fully pushing forward the cooperation with Horizon Group. This is over. Over. This cheap father-in-law is the same as in my past life. He only has Lucas, his ideal son-in-law whom he's watched grow up, in his eyes and won't listen to any advice. The company is really finished now. I'm frantic inside. I must run away immediately. If I delay any longer, it'll be too late. I couldn't sit still any longer and started fumbling to pack my personal things from my office, ready to leave at a moment's notice. Just then, I clearly heard Sophia's raised, anxious, and angry voice from the neighboring president's office. Dad, why are you so determined to make this decision now? We haven't fully investigated Horizon Group's background. This is such a huge investment. What if it's a scam? A scam? Shawan, since when did you become so paranoid? Mr. George's voice was angry too. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Lucas worked so hard to secure this. Do you know how many companies are eyeing this juicy piece? Precisely because I know how tempting this fat piece of meat is, I have to be extra careful. We can't gamble the fate of the entire company. You don't trust Horizon Group, and you still don't trust Lucas? I watch him grow up. I know him inside and out. How could he harm our Taylor family? Harm? He's the one who harmed our Taylor family. In the last life, you went bankrupt because of this project. Your heart gave out from anger, and you went to the hospital, and they found cancer. And not long after, I felt both anxious and furious, wishing I could rush in and shake that stubborn old man awake. Wait, liver cancer. I gave a sudden jolt. In the last life, George had found a problem with his liver in a fit of rage after the company fell into crisis, and by the time it was discovered, it was already beyond saving. Now, Though the company hasn't collapsed yet, the lesion might already exist. If he goes for a checkup now, there might still be hope. Although I was disillusioned with the Taylor family, George was still a human life, and he wasn't fundamentally a wicked person, just overly trusting of Lucas. I couldn't stand by and let him die. Bang! The office door was suddenly thrust open from the inside. Mr. George's face was pale as death. One hand clutched his chest, the other braced the doorframe as he staggered out, swaying and breathing heavily. Dad's heart feels bad. Dad! Sophia's voice changed from fright as she rushed forward and supported her father, shouting frantically toward the outside. Quick! Call an ambulance! Ethan! Go drive! Take my dad to Central Hospital. Isn't it supposed to be liver cancer? How does the heart have problems too? I didn't have time to think further. I immediately ran over and, together with Sophia, helped the nearly fainting George and rushed to the nearest Central Hospital as quickly as possible. Outside the emergency room, the atmosphere was heavy. After a series of tense examinations and resuscitation efforts, George's angina had temporarily stabilized, but the doctor, holding the preliminary test results, wore a grave expression as he found Sophia and me. Miss Taylor, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Taylor's heart issue isn't severe. It was an acute angina attack triggered by emotional agitation, and it's been brought under control. However, the doctor pushed up his glasses, his tone serious. While we were performing an abdominal CT to rule things out, we unexpectedly found a space-occupying lesion on his liver, and we highly suspect liver cancer. Fortunately, it was detected very early. It's in the early stage, and there's no sign of spread at the moment. The cure rate is very high. This is truly a misfortune turned into a blessing. Early stage liver cancer. The cure rate is very high. When Sophia heard this, she was struck as if by lightning and stood dumbfounded. Then, as if all her strength had been drained, she slumped onto a bench in the corridor, pressing her hands to her face, her shoulders trembling slightly. After a long while, she finally let out a long sigh, as if a 1,000-pound burden had been lifted. When she looked up at me again, her expression was so complicated I couldn't decipher it all. There was lingering fear, relief, and a kind of ineffable gratitude. Her voice carried a weary, hoarse tone as if she had barely escaped disaster. Thank you. Thank me for what? If I hadn't been worried your father would die and you'd be devastated and go even crazier, dragging me down with you, I wouldn't have bothered saying that. I habitually complained in my head and looked away, not used to this emotional side of Sophia. However, Sophia seemed not to have heard my inner complaint. She slowly stood up, walked over to me, and gently took my hand. Her palm was a bit cool and trembled slightly. Tonight, she tilted her head to look at me. Her eyes were slightly red from the earlier emotional swing, and her voice was soft but carried a meaning that could not be refused. Stay and have another drink with me. Drink again. I felt my scalp tingle and instinctively wanted to refuse. No, absolutely not. We just did last night, and your father is still in the hospital. $5,000. Sophia blurted out a figure that made my heart skip a beat. You pick the place. I heard my own dry voice. I mournfully realized that, under Sophia's financial offensive and my damned subconscious that somehow still lingered on last night, my willpower was as thin as paper. And so, history repeated itself. The next morning I woke up in another hotel room of equally refined taste, looking out at once again unfamiliar scenery. Inside I felt not desolate this time, but numb and filled with deep contempt for myself. Is my willpower really made of paper? Are we even getting divorced or not? If this keeps up, forget about divorce. I'm afraid this woman will consume me completely for the rest of my life. I despairingly cover my head with the pillow. Sophia walked in carrying a sumptuous breakfast, her brows and eyes curved in a smile, her complexion astonishingly good, a stark contrast to my face, which looked utterly despondent. She set the breakfast on the nightstand, leaned over, and gently poked the face I'd buried under the pillow with her finger, teasing in tone. Divorce? No ruse. Ew. How did you know I was thinking about divorce? I yanked the pillow off in a panic and stared at her, a chill shooting from my feet up to my skull. This is too eerie. Once could be coincidence, twice or three times. Could she really? Sophia grinned like a sly fox, deliberately reached into her pajama pocket and pulled out a piece of paper, waving it in front of me. When I took it, I found written plainly on it, Sophia, you stupid woman. Lucas is a liar. Horizon Group is a scam. Your father is sick, needs treatment, divorce. I want freedom. These were all the truest, nastiest, and most prophetic thoughts from the deepest part of my mind. I felt as if struck by 5 thunderbolts. My whole body went rigid. My face turned deathly pale, and my blood seemed to freeze. She knew everything. What on earth is going on? You know, I can hear all the thoughts in your head. Ethan. Sophia leaned close to me, her warm breath brushing my ear, her voice carrying a beguiling laugh. So, those colorful complaints in your mind, I've saved them all for you. She watched me stunned into silence, smiled with satisfaction, and continued in a leisurely tone. Oh, and Mr. Harrison from Horizon Group? I had the legal department and a top private detective split up and dig into his and Lucas's dirty dealings until we uncovered everything. You were right. This collaboration was totally a trap set by Lucas. Every transfer of funds, secret agreement, forged credit documents. All the evidence is now in the police's hands. Then she gently placed a small silver USB drive on the blanket in front of me. This is the backup. My mind went blank, looking at Sophia's smiling face. Then at the paper filled with writing and the USB drive, fragments of the last few days' oddities flashed through my head. The suddenly canceled trip to Rivertown, the inexplicable dependency, her inaction at the celebration banquet, the walk by the sea, the 2 nights at the hotel. All the clues snapped together in an instant to form a truth that left me dumbfounded. So you knew all along. You already knew Lucas was a con. New Horizon Group was a scam. You were acting this whole time? Watching me look like a clown, running around, warning you to be on guard about this and that, while secretly roasting you in my head. So my losing myself these past 2 nights, was that part of your plan too? Sophia didn't answer my accusation right away. Instead, she leaned in closer, almost touching my face. Her bright eyes were full of mischief and a hint of triumphant satisfaction. Yeah, twice, a total of $7,000. Cash or transfer. As for Lucas, he's probably sipping free tea at the police station by now. The company's safe, and my dad is saved. She looked me squarely in the eyes, her joking expression gone, and asked clearly and seriously, word by word. So, me now, do you still want a divorce? I stared at her in a daze, at her cheeks still tinged with last night's redness, at her astonishingly bright eyes as if filled with stars, at the genuine, touching smile at the corners of her lips. At this moment, all the grudges from a past life, the cuckoldry, the freedom, all seemed to grow hazy and distant. The heart that had been dead for 3 years, even cold in my previous life, suddenly and uncontrollably began to pound violently, a strange, burning warmth surging through my whole body. It seems, maybe, possibly, not divorcing, staying, seeing what tricks this woman who can read all my thoughts still wants to play, also, not bad. No sooner had that thought risen in my mind than the smile on Sophia's face bloomed like the first ray of sunshine after the thaw, dazzling and impossible to look away from. She hugged me tightly, burying her face in the hollow of my neck, and in my ear, in a voice choked yet full of joy, she whispered, "Good to see you've got some sense." The hug lasted a long time before Sophia let go of me. Her face was still flushed, but she pretended to be calm as she picked up a slice of bread and spread jam on it. By the way, the hospital sent word that my dad woke up this morning and is much more stable. He knows everything now and asked me to tell you. He was blind before, mistook a fisheye for a pearl, and wronged you. Sunlight poured through the huge floor-to-ceiling windows, landing on the soft tips of Sophia's hair and coating them with a warm golden glow. I watched her lower her head as she carefully spread the jam, watched her long eyelashes tremble slightly, and felt a flood of mixed emotions. I reached out and gently hugged her back, and a long-missed feeling called peace of mind quietly spread through me. Perhaps this rebirth bestowed by heaven wasn't meant for me to run away, but to give me a chance to tear open all the misunderstandings and pretenses and truly read this woman, cold in appearance, yet sharp and resilient inside, and who miraculously sees through all my thoughts.